Namaste, Dashidale. Good evening, good morning to all. Choe Khor Sum Ling is immensely pleased to host this session and bring you the teachings from a very special teacher for CKSL and for many of us. It's Venerable Tenzin Legtsok who will be leading today's session. Venerable Legtsok is an American Buddhist monk, born and raised in Virginia. Venerable took his ordination with His Holiness the Dalai Lama in the year 2001, and he later moved to India. Venerable Legtsok is a senior teacher at CKSL, and he's currently pursuing his Geshe studies at Serajay Monastic University in Balakupe. We are extremely grateful to Venerable Legtsok for accepting our request to teach today. Venerable has agreed to teach us every Tuesday from 6:30 to 8 p.m. India time. So today is the first session in that series. With that, I ask you to give your full attention to Venerable Legtsok in order to fully benefit from these teachings.
Hi, Shanti. Hi, everyone.
Venerable, good evening to you.
Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, so like Shanti said, then, we'll be starting. Well, first of all, I guess I should welcome everyone kind of back to Choe Khor Sum Ling. Since the pandemic began in India in, February or so. We haven't been able to have live sessions at the center, and actually our regular sessions we would have more or less every weekend at the center have been disrupted. So in the interim, I want to first of all thank Venerable Namjong and also Venerable Gache for leading many special sessions like prayer and meditation sessions related to the pandemic, and doing Nune practice over Sakadawa, and many special sessions that they led in the last few months. So that's been really helpful for many, many people, and I'm sure many people have been able to accumulate a lot of merit and purify karma and create causes for happiness through those sessions. So just recently, since it seems like there's no end in sight to the pandemic, really, we thought it's a good idea to resume more or less regular sessions with some of the topics. Before the pandemic started, we were going through Bodhisattva's way of life, and then some doing introduction and meditation weekends, and then covering other topics. So we thought to sort of more or less begin regular weekly sessions with CKSL in the virtual world. So here we are. So the good thing about this is we can not only include our members from Bangalore, but friends of CKSL from all over the world. Like I see Zarina in Sweden, I think, Steve in America, I guess. Are you in America, Steve? Yeah.
Yes, I'm back in the States.
Okay, great. Yeah, happy to see you. And I see there's, I think, Sankaraj from some of our friends from Assam also here. So yeah, it's great to see all of you. So as much as we can, I'd like to kind of recreate, our experience as if we were actually at the physical space, CKSL in Bangalore, together for this hour and a half every week, every Tuesday. And then Venerable Namjong has also agreed to lead one session every week on Sunday, right? So I hope you all will tune into that this coming Sunday. And then also, what is wheel turning day? Is which day of the week? It's the 24th, Shanti. But
24th, Venerable.
What day of the week is that?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
I'm sorry, it's Friday.
Friday, yeah, okay. So yes. Friday there'll be a special session with Venerable Namjong.
I will be making the announcement later.
Anyway, Shanti will announce it at the end, I'm sure.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, first of all, welcome. So we thought before we're planning to get into the Bodhisattva's way of life, to pick up where we left off with that later. But before that, we thought we'd do a few sessions on the two truths, just as kind of I'm not really sure the reasoning, but we just decided to do that. So that's what we're going to do. But it works out very well because His Holiness just gave 3 days of teachings on entering the middle way by Chandikirti, right, this past week. Excellent teachings. If you weren't able to view already, you definitely should. And he talked a lot about the two truths. So I thought to use these first few Tuesdays to go through some of the main points that His Holiness covered in those teachings. So every session we have an hour and a half, so I shouldn't keep talking too long here. We'll do some prayers at the beginning, just very brief, praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. And then I'll speak for about 30, 35 minutes. And then we'll have question and answer time, and then we'll dedicate. We'll do a little meditation also, probably before question and answer. And then we'll dedicate at the end. Okay, so let's begin with do a minute of meditation just to focus our mind. And then we'll do praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. So I think, Shanti, how are we you're gonna send out those documents? So these documents will come to you through the chat, I think. Okay, so while that's happening, let's settle yourself in your kind of meditation posture. And we just let's focus our minds inward for a minute on your breath or on your mind. Actually, in the first of these 3 sessions on the entering the middle way, His Holiness began by, which is quite uncommon, you don't see His Holiness often do, but he began by giving some advice about meditating on the nature of the mind. At the beginning of any meditation session, he said it's good to sit quietly, kind of draw your attention away from the sense consciousness, away from what we see with our ears and hear with our, we see with our eyes and hear with our ears and so forth, and focus on our mental consciousness, right? And then try to let the scattered thoughts kind of lessen, reduce, and just focus on the clear knowing nature of our mind for a while. And then within that kind of, once we generate some degree of clarity and stability of our attention, then use that to, in analytical meditation, as Holiness explained. So let's try to more or less do that now. Focus your attention inwards. And let's try to, instead of focusing on the breath, like we often do, try to focus on just the clear knowing nature of your mind, and especially not your sense consciousness, but of your mental consciousness. Right? So try to focus on the clear knowing nature of the mind for a minute. So then, if you like, you can we'll visualize Shakyamuni Buddha in the space in front of us. So usually a Buddhist teaching, we begin with, or any Buddhist practice, we begin with refuge, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and as a basis for taking refuge, one basis is to visualize the field of refuge. So without elaborating more, if you like, then visualize Shakyamuni Buddha in the space before you at the height of your eyebrows and your forehead, seated upon a golden throne, supported by 8 snow lions. Upon that is a lotus, a fully open lotus blossom with 1,000 petals, Upon that is a sun disk and a moon disk. Upon that sits Shakyamuni Buddha, wearing the robes of a fully ordained monk, with his right hand faced palm down on his right knee. So he's sitting cross-legged. So his right hand, palm down on his right knee, touching the moon disk upon which he sits. And then his left hand in his lap, the palm up in the mudra of meditative absorption, holding a begging bowl filled with blissful nectar. His eyes are half closed and half open. His mouth is, the edges of his mouth are gently turned up in a smile. And his face, his body is golden hue. And from every pore of his body, golden light rays radiate out throughout the universe, purifying all sentient beings of every form of suffering and the cause of suffering, and blessing all sentient beings to quickly develop all the realizations on the stages of the path of the full enlightenment. So briefly remember Shakyamuni Buddha's kindness in teaching the holy Dharma. And to whatever degree you can, remember how the Buddha and his teachings, the Dharma and the spiritual community, they have the power to protect us from the sufferings of this life, of future lives, of samsara, by revealing the truth, which dispels ignorance. So generate a wish to be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. For that reason, and we go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, with the faith that that they have the power to protect us from these sufferings. Okay, so now I'll share my screen and we'll recite this praise to Shakyamuni Buddha that His Holiness Dalai Lama always says. It's the first thing he he recites in the morning when he awakens and reflects on. It's a praise to Shakyamuni Buddha, which is composed by Nagarjuna and is found in his text, Root Wisdom or Fundamental Wisdom. And then we'll recite Shakyamuni Buddha's name mantra 3 times. Okay, so this praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. Compelled by great compassion, in order to dispel all wrong views, you taught the sacred truth. To Gautama Buddha, I pay homage. So then as you visualize Shakyamuni Buddha in front, then we'll recite his main mantra 3 times. So you can visualize from his holy body, first white nectar, light rays flow down through your crown, completely filling your whole body, and the bodies of all sentient beings, imagine seated around you, purifying all the suffering and the cause of suffering. And then golden light rays are emitted from Buddha's holy body, again flow into you through your crown, blessing you to develop all the realizations on the stages of the path to enlightenment, and the same for all other sentient beings visualized as seated around you. So then imagine from your heart, you make a request to Shakyamuni Buddha to guide us in studying and contemplating and meditating on his teachings. And for that, and in response to our request, and Buddha is very pleased, and he comes to abide above the crown of our head to bless us and guide us. And then as a way of further enhancing our motivation, let's recite the 4 measurable thoughts one time. And then, yeah, just reflect on the 4 measurable thoughts for a minute as a way of generating a motivation. How wonderful it would be for all sentient beings to abide in equanimity, free of attachment to friends and anger towards enemies. May they abide in equanimity. I myself will cause them to abide in equanimity. Please grant me blessings to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be for all sentient beings to have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they have happiness and its causes. I myself will cause them to have these. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be for all sentient beings to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they be free from suffering and its causes. I myself will cause them to be free from these. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be for all sentient beings to never be separated from the happiness which is totally beyond suffering. May they never be separated from this. I myself will cause them to be never separated from this. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. And then finally think, in order, the purpose of my engaging in this session now and all the activities of today, every day, is in order to benefit other sentient beings as much as I can by reducing and eliminating suffering and increasing their well-being and happiness up to full enlightenment. And for that purpose, I myself must quickly become fully enlightened. Therefore, I'll engage in this session. Okay, so with a positive motivation, then we create a cause for well-being and happiness of ourselves and others. Yeah, so we're going to talk about the 2 truths. Look at the 2 truths this session. Yeah, just to say a word about the 2 truths. Why are they important? Actually, fundamentally, it's because that as human beings, as sentient beings, by our very nature, we want to be free from pain, suffering, misery, problems, and want to have well-being and happiness. So the Buddha's main kind of practice, before he became enlightened, was to analyze, to look, well, if we have these problems like suffering, old age, death, that inevitably we experience as soon as we're born. Once we take birth, then inevitably we eventually experience sickness, we experience old age, and we experience death. And all of those things, they entail a lot of suffering, a lot of disturbance of our mind. Not to mention we have, during our life, we have so many afflictive emotions. Sometimes get angry, disagreements. Disagreements are fine when they lead to anger and resentment and bitter kind of argument, destroying relationships, destroying friendships. Then have jealousy, then have greed, depression. So many mental afflictions arise that disturb the peace of the mind. The definition of an afflictive emotion is an emotion such that when it arises in the mind, it disturbs the peace of the mind, causes dis-ease, discomfort, dissatisfaction, dukkha. So then the Buddha's main quest was to see, well, is it possible to, be free from all of the afflictive emotions, and then the negative karma, the results of the negative karma, our suffering experiences, in a way that's not just temporary, in a way that we achieve a state of freedom that is irreversible, right? That such that we achieve a state where we'll never fall into samsara again, where we'll never fall into the process of uncontrollably taking rebirth, experiencing old age, sickness, and death again and again. Is that possible? So through the Buddha's own practice and investigation, in his life as Siddhartha, but also through countless previous lives as an ordinary being and then as a bodhisattva, he came to discover, not only through his own power, but also through receiving teachings from previous Buddhas, countless previous Buddhas, that yes, that all these disturbing emotions that arise in our mind, negative karma we create, the results of negative karma, suffering we experience, they all arise from a fundamental cause, which is fundamentally wrong views, right? So that's why in that praise of Shakyamuni Buddha that we did at the beginning, it says, you who's compelled by great compassion, look at it again, use the same words, compelled by great compassion in order to dispel all wrong views, right? So that's the Buddha's main task as his teacher. His main job is, his main project, as a teacher, is to dispel wrong views. Why? Because his main discovery was that he saw that it's wrong views, and I mean specifically, there's many different wrong views, but the most essential one, the one that is the root of samsara, is grasping at inherent existence, an innate and not an intellectually acquired way of grasping, not like a philosophical opinion that we have, but an innately and spontaneously arising grasping at true existence, at inherent existence. It's a fundamental wrong view. It's the source of all the problems. So in order to dispel wrong views, you're taught the sacred truth, right? This is why the Buddha taught the Dharma, is in order to dispel wrong views, because he saw clearly that those are the fundamental source of all of our afflictions. And so, one excellent way to understand, the fundamental, the most central thing that the Buddha taught is, which is emptiness, shunyata, selflessness, right? Anatma is what is one of the main things that distinguishes the Buddhist teachings from any other spiritual teaching in the world, really. Not that, some degree of selflessness is not present in other teachings. There are, selflessness, and there can be, not looking at the ultimate truth that the Buddha taught, but looking at, there's different varieties of selflessness, which we'll look at, in these sessions on the two truths. But there are many degrees, different kind of flavors of selflessness that you can find present, especially like in other religions, even, besides Buddhism, like in the mystic traditions of Christianity, in the Sufi tradition of Islam, in some degree of some kind of selflessness, even in some of the Hindu kind of methods of practice that are taught. But the Buddha's, but then in all of those traditions, there's also an assertion of a kind of self, right? That the Buddha rejects. So the Buddha, among the spiritual teachers, I guess you could say, that have come to this world, I don't know, Jesus, Muhammad, maybe Shankaracharya, I'm not sure there's not really a founder of Hinduism specifically, Zoroaster maybe. There are, the Buddha is the one who taught the kind of most radical selflessness in the most radical way, and perhaps the most precise, logical way. So this is the main teaching of the Buddha, was the teaching of selflessness. And even within the sutras, the Buddha's own teachings, he taught different kinds of selflessness. In the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, the second turning, and the third turning, he taught selflessness in slightly different ways in each of those. So with according to Arya Nagarjuna and Bhaviviveka, Buddha Palita, and Chandrakirti, later also Aryadeva, and then later Atisha, and then Tsongkhapa, and most of all of the four schools of Tibetan Buddhism, they all consider, the form of selflessness that the Buddha taught in the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, which Nagarjuna, made great effort to clarify and interpret and expand upon. That is the highest, the view of the consequentialist middle way school, Madhyamaka Prasangika school. Right? So that's what the main one will look at here. But before we look at their presentation of the two truths, so that, I mean, why selflessness is essentially the ultimate truth. Right? When we talk about ultimate truth, we're talking about selflessness. When we're talking about conventional truth, is sort of everything else than emptiness or selflessness. So before we get to the prasangika or the consequential school presentation of the two truths, I want to talk a little bit about the importance of the two truths in general, which I'm doing now already, and then look at how the two truths are presented in the four schools, the four tenet schools: the Great Exposition School, the Sutra School, the Mind Only School, and then the and then the Middle Way School, essentially. So So now I'll just kind of to remind myself where I'm going here. I'll bring up this outline. I'll share the outline with you. So this is one of the documents that Shanti sent out to you. So one thing I usually don't do, which is kind of you could say one of the benefits of virtual teaching, is one thing I usually don't do at the center is use many quotes, because my memory is like a sieve that you use to strain spaghetti. Everything just and the content is like the water; it just flows out. So now when I'm teaching online, I'm happy to have. I brought together quite a few verses. Some of them that His Holiness used in his teachings the last few days, and some of them from presentations of the two truths by Chandrakirti in the text that His Holiness was using, the entrance to the middle way, and some from other sources. So while we're going through different outlines, then I try to at least have one or two verses for each point of the outline. So the two truths. First, the importance of understanding the two truths. So this is what I've been talking about now. Ignorance is the root of all suffering, and the two truths is the way to eliminate that ignorance. And understanding of the two truths, especially of the ultimate truth, is the way to eliminate suffering, which is the root of all. The ignorance, which is the root of all suffering. Since I have the screens here, let's go through this verse. So this verse is extremely important verse. Here, I'll highlight it just to emphasize the point. And maybe we can blow it up a little bit. So it's by Nagarjuna. It's from the Fundamental Wisdom of the Middle Way, chapter 18, verse 5. And this verse, His Holiness quoted in the teachings. His Holiness quotes almost every teaching he gives. If he goes into emptiness at all, he'll quote this verse. And His Holiness has said, actually, when I received, I heard of His Holiness say it on several occasions, but especially in 2016, I attended a teaching by His Holiness in Ladakh, and he explained this verse and asked everyone in the audience to memorize it and reflect on it every day. So this is one of the verses that His Holiness encourages all of his students to reflect on every day. And I've, so since I've been doing that, I found extremely helpful for my mind, because in a very succinct way, it lays out sort of the main teaching that the Buddha gave, which is what I've just been explaining, that suffering arises through the force of karma. We create karma through the force of afflictive emotions. Those afflictive emotions arise from false concepts, and those false concepts arise from here what's called elaboration, but in 4 steps, right? So let's look at this verse and then we'll go through those 4. It says, by exhausting karma and afflictive emotions, one is liberated. Karma and afflictive emotions come from false conceptions. Those come from elaboration. And then in brackets, of inherent existence, because that's added by the translator. But that's what elaboration means. As for elaboration, it is ceased by emptiness. I'm sorry, I didn't get the name of it. I think this is a Thupten Jimba translation, but I'm not sure. But just to go through this, so the first line is stating well, what is liberation, right? Liberation from samsara, nirvana, the state of, peace. Like in the, let's see, in the Four Seals, the Buddha taught, Duje Tanje, Zache Tanje Dungawa, Duje Tanje Mitako, Chotamje Dongshin Dameva, Mangla Deva Shiva. All contaminated phenomena are suffering. All compounded phenomena are impermanent. All phenomena are selfless and empty. The state beyond sorrow is peace, right? So that's also showing nirvana. So here it says, by exhausting karma, so it means not only negative karma, but also positive karma, positive contaminated karma. So even positive karma, which we've accumulated, but which is contaminated by our ignorance, grasping out inherent existence and other afflictive emotions, then it also gives rise to happiness, but happiness which is in the nature of suffering, right? So essentially, happiness which is actually the suffering of change, right? The second of the three sufferings. So by exhausting that karma, by eliminating it, and its cause, the afflictive emotions, those, ignorance, attachment, anger, jealousy, greed, arrogant pride, and so forth. Then by eliminating those two afflictive emotions and their imprints, as you say, and then karma, by eliminating those, one is liberated. So one becomes free from the suffering of, this life, next life, and samsara. But then how to do that is the question, right? So then in the next three lines, it shows how to do that. It says, by showing, well, why do we have karma? Where do our karmas come from? Where does our karma come from? Well, it comes from afflictive emotions. Where do afflictive emotions come from? They come from false conceptions. Karma and afflictive emotions come from false conceptions. So here, false conceptions, what are we talking about actually is, in Tibetan, it's called Somin Yijiki Namdo. Basically, it's like incorrectly believing superstitions. Lama Yeshe like to use this word, superstitions. Just like think a superstition. Why did Lama Yeshe use that term? I mean, I can only kind of interpret, but or speculate. But because, so let me look at speaker view here. Okay. Because, so why did Lama Yeshe use the term superstitions? Because superstitions, what are superstitions? It's like when we believe something that's not true, basically. A superstitious belief. Like if we throw salt over our shoulder, then, when we're cooking, if we throw salt over our shoulder, it's probably a very old one, then maybe we won't, we won't have misfortune befall us. Or if we step, we're walking, if you step on a crack, you break your mother's back. If you're walking down the street and you step on a crack, then it'll cause something bad to happen to your mother or your father. So superstitious belief is something we believe that causes us, think if you're a kid, you're a little kid, and you really believe like, oh no, I can remember one point I really believed that. Like if you really believe you step on a crack, some terrible thing is going to misfall you or someone you care about, or your mother, then it disturbs your mind, causes fear. So it's when we have beliefs that they're not based on reason, they're not based on wisdom, they're not based on kind of analysis, inspection, reflection on what's true and what's not true. They're just kind of we just blindly believe things, and in a way that they disturb our mind, right? So there's a big overlap here between that this fundamental idea that all of our afflictive emotions actually arise from what here are called false concepts. So my mind is totally, like I said, I already forgot what term they used here. False conceptions. Yeah. Here it's called false conceptions. Incorrectly believing concepts, actually. The fuller kind of translation for this term, or what's meant by the term used in this verse is incorrectly believing superstitions, or incorrectly believing concepts. So there's a big overlap here. So this is, what's a more useful kind of example of this is like, well, yeah, is one is thinking that like, well, like this, say with attachment, you have some, there's someone you see is very attractive, and you think, if only I can talk with this person again and again, that will bring me happiness. And if I can't spend time with this person, if I can't talk with this person, then I cannot be happy. So that's a total, it's a total like mental distortion. Or through anger is the opposite. You see someone, you have maybe you meet someone, you have a conversation with them that becomes very unpleasant, and you walk away with the feeling like, that person is just like a bad person. They're fundamentally a bad person. I don't like them. I never want to meet them again. Never want to talk with them again. So based on just one small interaction, you make a blanket judgment about the whole person, that they're a bad person. I can never enjoy being with that person. I just don't like them. So it might be true that you don't like them, but the thought that, based on one action that a person does, that thereby you generalize that into a whole opinion about the entire person. That is that's incorrectly believing. So you believe that that person is really a bad person based on just one interaction, right? So that's an incorrectly believing concept. It's a conceptual thing. It's not an idea that arises, through the force of our sense consciousness alone. No, it's like our eyes don't think that's a bad person. Our eyes just see, certain shape and form, colors and shapes. Our ears hear certain sounds, but then we interpret those things to be, either attractive or unattractive, good or bad. We make judgments. So all those judgments are concepts. So when those judgments are distorted and they cause our mind to be, and then through that distortion, they cause our mind to be disturbed, to be, exaggerating the ability of something to please us and craving for it, longing for it, not being able to separate our attention away from it, and feeling like I cannot be happy about it. Like in advertising, they try to do this all the time. When they show, really attractive person drinking Pepsi or Coke, like, the latest, anyway, show these attractive people, using or wearing certain clothes, or, going to certain places. Like I always notice in Bangalore, when I fly back to Bangalore from other places, there's a huge apartment complex kind of industry in Bangalore, where there's all these extravagant apartment buildings being built all over the place. And they have these really like, glossy, kind of flashy advertisements in the airport, on the walls of the airport. So you can't miss it. You get off the plane, you're walking to the baggage claim, and on the walls they're covered with these, these people like, beautiful men and women, reclining on their couch on like the 20th floor of some building, and there's a beautiful sunset in the background, and like, someone's serving them like some delicious food and drinks, and it looks like, oh wow, if only I could be there. It's like heaven. And there's some apartment building, you're trying to buy an apartment. So the advertising, they try to create this incorrectly believing concepts in our mind. So here the case is like, if I spend how many lakh rupees to buy an apartment in that building, then my life will be like that. It will be, I will have a life of ease. I will be wealthy. I will be comfortable. I will have everything attractive. People will envy me, and my life will be great. I'll be happy, long and short. So, but the idea that, but then if we analyze, we can see that that's not really true. If we, just because we have an apartment in that apartment building, do you think, you really will be happy? If you think, well, you're still going to get sick. You might like go broke. You might have, the worst neighbors you could possibly have. You might, there's so many other things in your life that could go wrong to disturb your happiness, even if you live in that apartment complex. So it's a false concept, that advertising creates, that by having this product, that will make me happy. This is very easy to identify one. But here there's a big overlap with cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, or So, you know, if you listen to His Holiness talks much, you'll definitely have heard of His Holiness mention this Aaron Beck. He's the father of cognitive behavioral therapy. Yeah, CBT. He's very old now. If he's still alive, I'm not sure he's still alive. But in that movie that they was released about His Holiness on his birthday, what was that movie? The Great 14th. I think in there was a scene where His Holiness is at a conference with Aaron Beck, probably back in the 80s or something. But so in the cognitive behavioral therapy, Aaron Beck, I mean, he came up with this whole theory that one of the main causes of most of our mental ailments, you know, apart from the radical ones, I mean, extreme ones like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder and so forth, but just ordinary depression is what he was looking at. Ordinary depression, unhappiness. That one of the major causes of that is what he would call cognitive distortions, right? So, and so cognitive distortions are exactly these incorrectly believing concepts. So I was looking online the other day to find material for a different course, but it seems like there's a frequently elaborated list of 15 cognitive distortions. But one of them is just like this, what I mentioned earlier about someone else. You know, where you see one small instance of a behavior, like you have a conversation with someone, maybe they support some political idea you don't like. Based on that, you make a blanket judgment about the entire person. Oh, they're a bad person. I don't like, they're kind of just totally ignorant or despicable kind of person based on one small thing. We do the same thing in relation to ourselves. When we may maybe in conversation we make a slip of the tongue and say something stupid, or in our work we make some small mistake, but then instead of seeing that in its proper perspective, then we blow that up to make a blanket statement about ourselves, like, oh, I'm such a stupid person, I'm a totally incapable person. Why am I such an idiot? I always make these kind of mistakes, right? So we beat ourselves up like in this way based on just one small thing. It's like we totally blow the thing out of proportion. So this is an example of what's here called a false concept. And in cognitive behavioral therapy, it's called a cognitive distortion. I mean, you can see like racism also is that kind of thinking is at play. Gross generalization, distorted concepts. So back to not to get too separated from here. So here Nagarjuna is saying that all of our karma and afflictive emotions arise from these kind of false concepts, false conceptions. And where do those false conceptions come from? Those come from, it's called elaboration, troa in Tibetan. But anyway, so here elaboration actually it's referring to the ignorance grasping at inherent existence. So why is it called elaboration? Because troa means kind of, this word in Tibetan, it's a translation of, let's see. So this word that it's a translation of troa in Tibetan. Troa can mean like to spread out, to radiate also. But here, elaboration, so what it means is that it's the idea that actually inherent existence, which means, which we'll get into what that means more later. A lot of you have a decent idea already, I know. So it means things existing from the side of the object, right? Apart from the observer. That the object has its own independent existence. It exists through its own power from the side of the object. So the idea, the perception that things have that kind of independent existence or inherent existence or existing from the side of the object, that perception is totally comes from the side of the mind. It's a projection of our mind. So it's an elaboration in the sense that it's something that our mind spreads out. Our mind puts that on the object, right? So I'm making all these gestures here, but you can't see because I'm sharing my screen. There we are. I'm making gestures on Zoom. So I'll back up a little bit. I get my hands on the screen. So so the idea that troa, like spreading out, right? So it's the idea that we have this innately arising ignorance, which grasps that everything out there is real, that the objects like my laptop, all the other people, I see people on the screen, my table, all the things that we perceive, even in my own body, even I, myself, that these things, they have each of them, they have their own independent existence. The laptop is a laptop from the side of the object. That person, they are a person. There's some kind of real substantial entity there from the side of the person, without involvement of concepts or mind or mental imputation at all. So it's our mind, our innately arising ignorance spreads out this idea that there's this kind of external reality about the world that has nothing to do with my mind or my concepts. It's totally separately. And I'm just kind of like, so in that view, it's like, I'm just kind of like, a guinea pig running through a maze. Like there's this external world out there, and I'm just trying to, survive and do whatever I can to get what I want and go where I want to go. But, there's all these other things that are happening that I have no control over, how other people are, whether things cause me happiness or unhappiness, it's totally out of my hands. Think of like an extreme example is when, you see in love songs all the time, one usually the guy falls in love with the girl, and then, he kind of, and then she seems to be interested in someone else, and then he's saying like, I can't live without you. I always remember the song from the 80s. It is called that, I think. I can't live without you, something like that. So like, there's this idea that if I can have you, this person, I'll be happy. If I can't have you, then I can't even live. Like I'll die. Not to mention just be happy. Like I can't even, live. So our emotions, attachment and anger, they're so strong that they do have a lot to do with our life force, but they're so strong that it even feels like, if we can't have this thing that I see as attractive, then I can't live. But we totally don't realize that perception of that thing as attractive comes from the side of our mind. It's not something from the side of the object. And even so, not only the attractiveness of the object doesn't come from the side of the object, but even that object being an object, just the laptop being a laptop. It is not a laptop apart from a person who uses it as a laptop. A laptop is a thing that's being used. A thing that is being used does not exist in dependence from a user. If I was sitting here, I could be sitting here giving a Dharma talk, but if there's no one listening, is that really a Dharma talk? It's more like I'm just sitting in my room being crazy, like just talking to the walls. So like, have a Dharma talk, there has to be people like listening. The Buddha, would the Buddha be an object of refuge if nobody took refuge in the Buddha? The Buddha being a refuge depends upon people going for refuge to the Buddha, right? So everything that exists in dependence upon other things. So what Nagarjuna is saying in this verse, so you probably had enough of me waving my arms around that. So I'll go back to this verse. So what Nagarjuna is saying is that all of our karma, all of our afflictive emotions, all of our false concepts, they all arise from this fundamental ignorance, grasping at things existing inherently. And that kind of perception of inherent existence, of that perception of things existing from their own side is something it's an elaboration of our mind, right? The appearance of things existing from the side of the object and having the properties of being attractive or unattractive from the side of the object, that's all a projection of our mind. It's a projection of our innately arising ignorance. It's an elaboration, right? And so that's his diagnosis of the problem. So what's the solution? It comes in the last kind of line. As for elaboration, it is ceased by emptiness. So what does he mean? He means it's the wisdom realizing emptiness that eliminates the ignorance grasping at inherent existence. It eliminates this elaboration. Right, it eliminates, reduces, and eliminates this tendency to perceive things in a way that they don't. And the cause of that perception is, you know, this innately arising distortion in our own mind, this distorted view of things, this wrong view, right? So that elaboration is ceased by emptiness. So I'm just keeping it on share screen here for a minute, because look at this last line. As for elaboration, it is ceased by emptiness. So His Holiness often gives a commentary that that word by actually can also be translated as in, right? According to the Sanskrit. So this is a commentary that was given to His Holiness by Kunu Lama Tenzin Gyaltsen. Kunu Lama Tenzin Gyaltsen is one of His Holiness teachers. His Holiness received the commentary, the lineage and commentary of the Bodhisattva's Way of Life by Shantideva from Kunu Lama Tenzin Gyaltsen. So and he was Kunu Lama Tenzin Gyaltsen was a Sanskrit scholar. He knew Sanskrit. So he told His Holiness this in Sanskrit, this line can be interpreted two different ways. As either as for elaboration, it is ceased by emptiness, or it is ceased in emptiness, right? So it's good. I usually keep that in the footnote, but somehow my footnotes didn't translate over here, copy over here. But that's an important distinction, because it is ceased by emptiness. That means by meditating on emptiness, we can reduce this elaboration, the ignorance grasping at inherent existence, and eliminate it. So that shows the truth of the path, of the Four Noble Truths, right? Of the Four Noble Truths, that shows it is ceased by emptiness, by meditating on emptiness, you eliminate ignorance, which is the cause of all suffering. Basically, to meditate on emptiness, of course, supported by meditation on renunciation, compassion, bodhicitta, and so forth on the wisdom side. But it is, so that ceased by emptiness shows the truth of the path. Whereas if you interpret it, it's ceased in emptiness. That means, like, within the sphere of emptiness, there are no elaborations, right? There is no grasping at inherent existence. There is no appearance of inherent existence. So that's showing the truth of cessation, right? Of the Four Noble Truths, that shows the truth of cessation. That when you achieve the truth of cessation. So remember, the truth of cessation is the emptiness of the mind, which is totally free from the afflictive emotions, or you could say the afflictive obscuration and the knowledge obscuration, or even just one. I mean, you can achieve the cessation, which is an abandonment of the afflictive obscurations. But the actual cessation is not just the abandonment of those, but the emptiness of the person, or the emptiness of the mind of the person who has abandoned those. So there, in that emptiness, there, elaboration, ignorance, grasping at inherent existence, and the inference of that have been eliminated. So in that emptiness, in that cessation, there are no elaborations, right? So that way of interpreting that line, it shows that it is ceased in emptiness, shows the truth of cessation. If you interpret it as it is ceased by emptiness, it shows the truth of the path. And apparently in the Sanskrit, the particle used in Sanskrit can mean both, right? So it indicates both. So, I mean, so the first, you could say, let's see. Yeah, so you could say that the second and third lines, basically they show, so this verse also shows the Four Noble Truths, right? The second and third line. Well, the first line you could say, by exhausting karma and inflicted emotions, one is liberated. Right? Liberation is the truth of cessation. I'll get a little closer. Liberation is the truth of cessation. So it shows it once. And then karma and afflictive emotions, which are mentioned again in the second line. Karma and afflictive emotions come from false conceptions. So those all, karma, afflictive emotions, false conceptions, those are all primarily the truth of the cause of suffering. And thereby indirectly, they also show the truth of suffering. Right? So they show that line shows And the third line also, those come from elaboration. So all of that shows the truth of suffering and the cause of suffering. And then as for elaboration, it is ceased by emptiness or in emptiness. That shows the truth of the path and the truth of cessation. So maybe we only have half an hour left. I want to do a little bit of meditation and question and answer. So I'll just summarize here that so how do the two truths and the four truths, how do they relate to each other? Is that fundamentally by not understanding, by not understanding the two truths, the conventional truth and ultimate truth, which essentially means by not generating the wisdom of emptiness and just habitually following the opposite, the ignorance grasping at inherent existence, and then all the incorrectly believing concepts or cognitive distortions that those give rise to. Either other things inherently exist, and then that they're inherently pleasant and attractive or inherently unpleasant and unattractive, and then giving rise to anger and attachment and all the other afflictive emotions. By following those, by not understanding the two truths and following ignorance, we give rise to the first of the Four Noble Truths. The first two, right? We give rise to the truth of suffering and its causes, the truth of the cause of suffering. So in short, by not understanding the true truths, by being blind to the true truths, we produce the first two of the Four Noble Truths, the truth of suffering and the truth of the cause of suffering. And then the opposite. By correctly understanding the true truths, we achieve the second of the Four Noble Truths, the truth of the path, which is mainly meditation on emptiness, and the truth of cessation, which is what we strive to achieve, cessation of sufferings and the causes of suffering, right? Nirvana and enlightenment. So by correctly understanding the true truths, we achieve the truth of cessation and the truth of the path. So in short, it's why are the true truths important? Because it's by due to not understanding the true truths from beginningless time until now, we haven't generated the wisdom understanding the true truths. Therefore, we're suffering. That's why from the smallest suffering we have, from having a little, a headache, from having a little hunger, from waking up with a stiff neck, to having kind of self-doubt, to doubting ourselves, any misfortune we have, to having a global pandemic, any misfortune we have whatsoever, it all arises from not understanding the two truths. We've never generated that wisdom from beginningless time until now. And in order to eventually, be completely free from any suffering whatsoever, in a way that's irreversible, that will never fall into suffering again, and thereby gain wisdom, gain understanding of the path by which we can lead all other sentient beings out of suffering, just as Shakyamuni Buddha does and His Holiness Dalai Lama does for us. All of that comes about through understanding the true truths correctly, right? So in short, by not understanding the true truths, we're bound in samsara. By correctly understanding the true truths, we're freed from samsara, right? So that's why it's important. But then how to understand the true truths? So this is where I want to begin with some meditation now. Do I have anything in the outline? Yeah. Well, I won't explain this verse now, but I'll come back to it. But just to give you an idea, it says so this is by Chandakirti from the Madhyamaka. All entities bear dual natures, as obtained by correct or false views of them. What is seen by perfect vision is the ultimate truth, and what is seen by false vision is conventional truth. It is taught. So basically, yeah, maybe that's a little too deep for us right now. But basically, the two truths are about the difference between the way things appear and the way things actually exist. Right? The Buddha is saying that the fundamental cause of all of our problems is because there's a distortion. There's a disconnect. There's a, what do you kind of say? There's a dissonance, a disagreement between the way things appear to us, and we believe in that, versus the way things actually exist. When we analyze, we see that the way things exist is in a different way. And this idea is not unique to Buddhism. You find it in many different religious traditions and wisdom traditions. I mean, like Plato, when Plato's talking about the ideals, this is what he's talking about. But the way things appear to us is actually not the truth. What the truth is something else that we can only discover by reason, rationality. But I think the way to start, I think a good place to start with understanding the true truths is just trying to find for ourselves examples of this phenomena of things appearing to us as being in one way, but then if we use reason to really analyze, to see that actually the way they appear is not like that. And we can find in many different cases, many different ways. Like one way is by thinking about, physics and high school physics and chemistry, how blown away we are, when we learn about atoms, atomic structures, how all physical things are made up of atoms. Actually, we don't see that when we look at tables and our bodies. We don't see atoms, and yet it's been proven through many experiments that actually everything is made up of these atoms and molecules, and those atoms are made up of fundamental particles of protons, neutrons, and electrons. And within an atom, 99% of you can say the kind of volume of an atom is space, is empty space, right? The actual particles, I mean, this is apart from quantum mechanics, just thinking about, ordinary classical mechanics, physics, is that, the particles, the nucleus and the atoms which orbit them, they only occupy maybe, less than 1% of the space that atom occupies, right? So most of it is empty space. But when we see, we see physical things around us, we don't see empty space at all. No, they look completely solid. So that's just kind of one cognitive distortion, one difference that we see between, which we know through reason. I guess if we trust that, the physicists to discover that, or you can actually look in electron microscopes and see this apparently now. But between the way things appear and the way they actually exist. But another more everyday example we might, look at is, well, like the example I gave of advertising. How, we see an advertisement, or even we look at our own craving. When you're craving some kind of food or craving to be with someone, and you think, if I can only have that, I'll be happy. But then you actually get it and it doesn't make you happy. It doesn't. Like I give the example of the apartment building. You see this, big billboard advertising this flashy, expensive apartment building. But then imagine, you go through the whole process of, taking a loan, buying it, moving in, and then, you're not happy. It doesn't give you the satisfaction you thought. So we can see so many instances of that. I mean, the opposite also happens, where we imagine, going to a family reunion to meet this, see all these family members that we always find so awkward to be around, and we think it's going to be miserable. But then we go there and we have a great time. The opposite can also be true. So the beginning of looking at the true truths is looking at this difference between, we try to find many examples of the way things appear versus the way things actually exist, and how there's a disagreement, there's a dissonance between those two so often, right? In so many cases. Right, so the way things appear, which we later realized to actually not be the truth, is kind of similar to the conventional truth. It's the ordinary truth, the way things appear, versus what we discover, the way things really are when we analyze a little deeper, is kind of similar to the ultimate truth. Yeah. So let's just meditate for, I don't know, maybe a little over 5 minutes now, and just try to come up with some own examples of your own examples of this kind of distortion between the way things appear and the way things actually exist, right? So I've given some, welcome Maya, hello. I've given some examples now. So yeah, you try to do on your own, right? So yeah, get comfortable in your meditation posture. Take a few deep breaths. Just let your mind clear out a little bit. Okay, so then think of some of the examples I gave, like advertising, or when we're attached to someone, or feel very averse to someone, or have different opinions about ourselves, or even physical. You can think about chemistry, physics, atomic structure. Try to find different examples where there's a distortion between the way things appear to you or appeared to you at one time, but then later through different experiences, or through some kind of learning, as in the case with chemistry or physics, or different experiences, as in the case with people, or products, that you see that the way things appeared to you as real before, later you come to see that that's totally an illusion. That's not true. So just take about 5 minutes and try to think of some examples, and then try to investigate, at least 1 or 2 examples to see how there's this difference between the way things appear and the way they actually exist. Okay, let's stop the meditation there. We won't have so much time. And yeah, I'll take any questions now. So yeah, I think you can all turn your videos on. It's okay, or especially if you have any questions, turn your video on. And then I think you can unmute yourself if you have a question and ask. So, I mean, the idea is that while we're going through the true truths now for a few weeks, it's excellent if you can, try to practice mindfulness of the true truths. Beginning in a way that like we're just meditating. Try to notice how there's a disconnection, a distortion between the way things appear to you and the way they actually exist. And actually, I would challenge you to look at every time you have any form of attachment or aversion to something, there's always a mental distortion that underlies that. Whereby things appear in a way that when you analyze, you see they don't exist that way. But I wanted to point out, especially there's this section in the prayers that were sent out. There's preliminary prayers, and then there's these verses given by His Holiness the Dalai Lama for daily contemplation. So it's really excellent if you can use these in your daily practice. There's about 8 verses there, mostly by Nagarjuna. His Holiness has advised many times that he uses these in his daily practice. He encourages all of us as students to use these in his daily practice. So yeah, you can use those verses, that's excellent. And then also I included the 8 verses of thought transformation there, and then dedication prayers, which we'll use at the end. Okay, so any questions yet? Come on, Maya, you must have a question.
It's just that I just came because I the thing, so I don't. I have a question.
Okay, Archana has a question, I think.
Hmm?
Okay, sure. Go ahead. You go ahead.
Yeah,
Maya,
it's just. Yeah, I was just wondering, something that I've already thought about regarding to the two truths is when we are talking about emptiness, right, and meditating about emptiness and so on. I was wondering just about if we can relate karma into that as well, because since everything is manifesting because of our karma, so in a way, isn't that also I was just thinking, when we see that things are not concrete, including our own karma, it's because we are like what we are experiencing right now is because we are creating it. So it's our mind that creates where we are at. So when we are meditating on emptiness, not just looking at the self as looking for the self, but also if we contemplate on karma, we can also, this is what I thought about, we can also go into emptiness with that regard, because at the end, everything that we create is our karma to be created like this.
Well, it follows that your lunch is your karma because it's something you create.
In a way.
But hold on, is your lunch, what did you have for lunch today? Have you had lunch already?
Yeah,
Mine is Israel.
Couscous.
It follows that your couscous is karma because it's something you create.
Yes.
It is. So it follows that your couscous is the mental factor of intention because it's karma.
Well, but if you look at it, the conditions that I find myself in right now,
is
because
your couscous a mental factor?
Huh?
Is couscous a mental factor?
No, but the fact that I'm eating.
No, it's not, right? No, it's not. It's food. No, mental factor is consciousness. Karma is a mind, it's consciousness, it's a mental factor. Yes, it's true. The fact that you're able to eat couscous is due to your karma. The fact that you're in Israel having couscous during the pandemic.
Yeah, definitely the fact that I'm in Israel right now.
It's due to our karma. That's true. No, the short answer to your question is that we can use, the fact that the way karma works and the fact that all of our experiences, especially of happiness, of pleasure and suffering, arise through the force of our karma. So that's one kind of dependent arising, right?
Mm-hmm.
And dependent arising is the best reasoning to establish that things are empty of inherent existence.
Exactly.
So you're right. So by meditating on karma and the law of karma, the way karma works, that helps us to see emptiness.
Exactly.
Right? So that's the way they're related. Yeah. Okay. I'll go to Archana now.
Thank you.
Good evening, Venerable.
Good evening, Archana.
I wanted to ask you, there is conventional truth and ultimate truth. And so there could be a distortion in our understanding of both, right? We could have distortions in our understanding of conventional truth and ultimate truth. Anyway, we know that distortion exists. So as far as dependent arising is concerned, would you relate it to conventional truth, and understanding of conventional truth will lead to a better understanding of dependent arising also?
Exactly. Well said. Yeah. Actually, I'll show you. I'll just give you a little preview. So maybe it'll draw you back for next week. From Chandrakirti. He says exactly what you're saying, Archana. What is it? Anyway, he says, by understanding conventional truth, you understand ultimate truth. The one is like a bridge to the other. Maybe I didn't put that verse in. I don't see it here. Anyway, yes. Dependent arising itself is a positive phenomenon, right?
Yeah.
So it's always a conventional truth. All positive phenomena are conventional truths. So all material things are conventional truths. All instances of consciousness or mind are conventional truths. People, we are conventional truths. Ultimate truth is just emptiness. Emptiness is a negative phenomenon. It's a non-affirming negation, right? It's a mere lack of inherent existence, right? That is ultimate truth. But it's independence upon, seeing how things arise dependently or interdependently arising phenomena. Independence upon parts, they depend upon cause and effect, as with the case of karma, and they depend upon mental imputation. So all of the dependently arising property of things, that's all part of their conventional nature. So actually, we think of like conventional truth and ultimate truth as two separate things, but actually they are dependent arisings. The existence of ultimate truth depends upon conventional truth. And it cannot exist. Ultimate truth, if you don't have a conventional phenomena, then you cannot have ultimate truth. It's like if you don't have a laptop, you can't have the emptiness of inherent existence of a laptop, right? Like the laptop's ultimate nature. Another one, maybe an easier way to think about the two truths, conventional truth and ultimate truth, is as the two natures. It's another way they're described in the text, actually. And every phenomena has an aspect of both conventional nature and an ultimate nature. Like the laptop itself, or your phone is a conventional truth, right? The phenomenon itself, but it has an ultimate nature, which is its emptiness of inherent existence, right? The ultimate truth or the ultimate nature of the laptop, it depends upon a conventional truth, the laptop itself. It depends upon that phenomenon, and it can't exist without that, right? So any instance of emptiness is the emptiness of inherent existence of something, of a consciousness, of a person, of a laptop, of a table. It's like everything that exists, everything that we think of, everything we perceive and see around us, all of those things are empty of inherent existence. And each of them, they have their own uncommon property. Like here, my mouse, I'm using this mouse. So this mouse is empty of inherent existence. And this mouse so there's an emptiness of inherent existence which belongs to this mouse. It's a property of this mouse. It's a cute mouse. You know, like here's my phone. I have my phone here too. This is actually the signal to you is going through this phone. I'm using my hotspot for you guys. So this phone has an emptiness of inherent existence, which is different from the one of this mouse. You know, the emptiness of inherent existence of this mouse exists as a property of this mouse, not as a property of this phone. The emptiness of inherent existence of this phone exists as a property of this phone and not of this mouse. They're different, right? So this phone has an ultimate nature. This phone is a conventional phenomena. So the phone itself is like, its nature is to be a conventional phenomena. But it has an ultimate nature, which is its emptiness of inherent existence. And that's an uncommon, you know, thing, possession of this. And the mouse, you know, the same. It's like, you know, we're all human beings. Each of us is a human being. But, you know, human being, we think of it as like, you know, a thing that's kind of out there, this category. But that category depends upon the instances of individual human beings. Without any of those instances, there wouldn't be that category of human being. And yet, that being a human being is a property that each of us possess. So like, I have, you know, there's the human beingness that exists as a property of me. It's part of me, and this, you know, it's part of each of you have your own property of that, and each of that is separate, right? But it's independent upon all those instances of human beingness, of being a human being, that we have the idea of, the whole classification of human being. And that is dependent upon each of those instances. So in that way also, even ultimate truth, it's, you know, it seems like this kind of big truth that exists out there, like God somehow, right? But we Buddhists don't believe in God, you know, creator God. So actually, ultimate truth is just kind of a generalization of all of these instances of individual things being empty of inherent existence, right? And each of those instances of emptiness of inherent existence depend upon the existence of a conventional phenomenon as well, right? Even emptiness itself, I was thinking about this today actually, emptiness itself, it has a conventional truth. You know, there's an aspect of its nature which is a conventional truth. Like emptiness is a permanent phenomenon. So emptiness is being permanent. That's an aspect, that's one nature with that emptiness. It's an aspect, it's a property of that emptiness, that it is a permanent phenomenon. And that permanence is a conventional truth. So emptiness itself also has an aspect of, you know, it has like a conventional nature as well. Even though its nature is to be an ultimate truth, it has a property of like a conventional nature, which is one nature. That's a little complicated, but so yeah, we'll come back to that. But does that answer your question, Archana? I think.
Yeah, partly, yes.
Which part doesn't it answer?
What will happen to hidden phenomena? They are also dependently arisen.
What will happen to
Hidden phenomena are also conventional truth.
Hidden phenomena are conventional truths. Not all. Emptiness is a hidden phenomenon, but not a conventional truth. I mean, hidden phenomena, it just means phenomena basically that we don't, we have to use reasoning and logic to understand, that we can't just perceive directly with our senses. Basically it means that. So, you know, basically that. There's some qualifiers, but yeah. So I'm not sure that I don't really understand. It seems like there's something else going on in your question there that I don't really.
Yeah, I was trying to think whether you can actually understand ultimate truth by understanding conventional truth really well. And
well, that's what the whole course is about. We'll get into that. But yeah, I mean, it's by understanding, by reflecting more and more deeply on dependent arising, then you come to see ultimate truth. I mean, just think about you. What am I? You know, we just first we get this ordinary idea of what we are. Like, well, I'm this person. I'm sitting here. I'm talking. Blah blah blah. But then we start to look for, well, where is that person actually? It's not outside of our body. It's not outside of our mind. It's not my mind. It's not inside or any part of my body. Where is that person that seemed to be so real? It's just something merely labeled by the mind. So then, I mean, that's the classic example of this distortion between the way we appear initially, and when we analyze and investigate, we see actually we don't exist that way at all. So that's the kind of how we use, looking deeply at conventional phenomena to arrive at the understanding of ultimate truth. Okay, we're out of time actually, but I'll take one more question. So it's a little past 8 already. But if there's one more question, then I can try to answer. Okay, if nobody asks a question in the next 60 seconds, then I'm going to give you guys a pop quiz next session.
Can I just add to that? That this is exactly what I was asking about.
Hold on, wait, Maya. I think I hear someone else. What?
Maya.
No, okay, Maya. What's your question?
No.
Oh, add something, please. Oh, yeah.
Hi, it's just exactly what I was wondering about regarding to karma, because when you think about and contemplate about karma, in a way, it's the hidden phenomena, right? Because
karma is a hidden phenomenon, very much.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
So in a way, I was thinking, because we do meditation about try to find the I, right? Which is exist using conventional, in a way, searching, but then. Why I was thinking about hidden phenomena regarding to karma, because when you learn more and understand better how karma works, I mean, in the level that we can, because for me, unenlightened being for sure, I mean, so then it helps with the understanding of the hidden phenomena in a way that helps you understand the ultimate truth, I think. I mean, this is why I was thinking about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in general, the more we understand any kind of dependent arising, that's going to help us understand emptiness. I mean, get closer to understanding emptiness. And the more subtle that dependent arising is, the closer the more, I think, the more powerful, you could say, it helps you sort of get an idea of emptiness, right? It's stronger. So karma is an extremely subtle kind of dependent arising. I mean, it's a form of cause and effect, but it's much more subtle than just like, when we plant seeds in the field and see crops grow, or we turn the gas burner on and put a pot of water on it and the water gets hot. That's very easy to see. But karma is very subtle, right? So if we get if we can use logic to get a good understanding of karma, that, I mean, you can already see how it makes things seem less concrete, more kind of flexible, more dreamlike, because our mind is involved a lot. So that, that helps to loosen up this kind of grasping of a concrete reality. And it's getting us close to emptiness. Yeah, so Subhashni, I'm so glad Subhashni has raised her hand. And she's the only one, she's probably the oldest participant here, but she's the only one who figured out how to raise the virtual hand, apparently. Subhashni has raised her virtual hand. Subhashni, can you unmute yourself? It seems I can't unmute you. Can you unmute yourself, Subhashni?
There's a question from Setanla. Setanla, could you please unmute yourself and ask Venerable the question?
Where's Setan?
I've written the question in the chat box.
Okay. Is it correct if we say that only by realizing ultimate truth can we realize conventional truth, as ultimate truth is realized on the basis of negating conventionalities? So first part, is it correct to say that only by realizing ultimate truth we can realize conventional truth? Well, that's kind of complex. That there's a slight difference between, realizing, hold on, there's 3 things you can kind of think about. One, realizing something that is a conventional truth. Like my phone, this is a conventional truth. But to realize this phone, I don't have to realize conventional truth. I couldn't hear I think your line was breaking up. couldn't hear what you were saying. So to realize something that is a conventional truth, you don't have to realize impermanence. But then the question is, well, what does it mean to realize conventional truth? We'll get into that later when we look at the definitions. But generally, and then again, to realize conventional truth and to realize that something is a conventional truth is also a little bit different, right? So there's three things. To realize something that is a conventional truth, like to realize the phone, is easy. To realize conventional truth itself, there's some debate about how it is that you do that. To realize that something is a conventional truth, that's the third one. Yes, for that you probably do have to realize emptiness. Actually, we'll get into a quotation later. There's a famous quotation by Tsongkhapa in his commentary on Chandrakirti's Entering the Middle Way, where he seems to say that, yeah, to realize that something is a conventional truth, you have to realize that the way it appears is false, that the way it appears is not the way it exists, right? And to realize that, and specifically, the way it appears as inherently existent is not the way it exists. To realize that, you have to realize emptiness, and that is an ultimate truth, right? So it's important to understand this distinction between, but usually, people say, like, just realizing this phone, is to realize the conventional truth of the phone. Although, yeah, that's a little problematic. Well, it's only by realizing that the way something appears as inherently existent is not the way it exists. It's emptiness. Can you realize that that phenomena is a conventional truth? That's true. And as ultimate truth is realized on the basis of negating conventionalities. Ultimate truth is, I'm not sure what you mean there, Tenzin. If you can try to, maybe you can try to unmute yourself and say that.
Venerable, I wanted to say, when we practice on ultimate truth, we negate the object of negation.
Yeah, but that's not a conventionality.
An object of negation can be like a table, a chair.
No. We're not negating tables and chairs. The object of negation, Satya, has to be something that does not exist. That's why you can negate it with a valid cognition. If something exists, you can't negate it with valid cognition. Like, I cannot negate tables. I cannot find that tables and chairs don't exist, because they do exist. So anyway, Satya, we'll come back to that later. It's a good question. And think about it a bit more, and then we'll come back to it again. Shanti, is there gonna be recording of this available somewhere later?
Yes, Venerable, the recording will be uploaded on the Choe Khor Sum Ling YouTube account. So I will be sharing. If everyone can share their email addresses, I'll be very happy to share the link with everyone.
Okay, anyway, let's dedicate now. And then if you have any closing words, Shanti, I'll give it back to you. So I'll share screen. We'll just use some of the last verses on here. Since we're already so over time, let's just use the last. Two verses on the right. Voice, and your own merit, the merit created by all the others in the session, the merit created by all sentient beings everywhere, the merit created by all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, especially our own gurus, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and so forth. Rejoice. So all this merit gathered together. Then we dedicate, especially that so many people suffering in this time of kind of world crisis and pandemic, who are in hospitals, who are at home very sick, who have lost their job, who are suffering abuse, depression, hunger. Many people caught in a natural disaster in the floods, especially in Assam, Bangladesh. People caught in refugees from Syria, Sudan, other places. People were caught in, I think there was a famine. I forget which country in Africa. And in places with so much turmoil, like Afghanistan, Syria, other places in Central South America. So we pray that all those situations, people have relief from all those distressing situations. And pray that all sentient beings everywhere have not only temporary but also ultimate relief from suffering and cause of suffering. So then we'll dedicate these last two verses. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures, for as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain for the spread and miseries of the world. And especially may the Buddha Dharma flourish in all directions. And may our holy teachers have long, stable life. Okay, so thank you all. And now I hand it back over to you, Shanti.
Thank you, Legtsok. Thank you very much for the precious teachings today. And we really very much look forward to hosting and receiving many more teachings from you, Legtsok. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And for
so your homework for y'all is meditate a little bit on the two truths, to whatever degree you can.
Yes.
Until next week. So next Tuesday, same time, same place.
We have few publicity announcements. If you wish to be on our regular CKSL mailing list, do drop us an email with your contact details. You may email us at info@cksl.in. I'll put this email address in the chat box below. Choe Khor Sum is on July 24th, a multiplying day commemorating the day when Shakyamuni Buddha first started Sarnath. We have another very special CKSL teacher who will be leading an event on this auspicious day. Venerable Legtsok's next teaching session will be on Tuesday, July 28th from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. India time. Thank you very much and have a good night.
Okay, thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable.